everyone. First of all, I want to thank Alan for her excellent job taking care of the club. Before I introduce Amir, who is going to give the lecture, I just want two notes. The first one is that last week we gave a lecture in a big conference of 4,000 people of TLD, who was leading by Dr. Yossi Vardi, the guru of the high tech in Israel. Unfortunately, he's the guru of the high tech, but the contact to the presentation was very limited, and not everyone succeeded to get in. So I sent, Alan, of course, sent everyone the presentation recorded. It was the subject was what can I learn from bats and from what can I learn from birds. I was talking on the birds, but mainly I recommend you to listen to the lecture of Professor Yossi Uvel, who is #1 in the region in the story of the bats. Second point is that, as you remember, in December we are planning our trip to the Hula Valley, which is the highlight of the club. We still don't know what will happen with the corona, so we leave it open. Hopefully we can get it with the bus, but Alan and Amir and me will let you know in time. If things are not changed, we will remove the tour probably to February, but of course we will let you know in time. Anyway, we ordered already the hotel, so everything is under control. I want to introduce Amir. Amir is a very close and very good friend. He was in my bird club in the 70s, so you can see how old I am as a boy. Then he established the Jerusalem Bird Observatory together with Dr. Gidon Perlman, the cardiologist, and he's now one of the key persons of ornithology in birding in Israel. He is a very talented nature photographer and also a painter. He finished his degree in Bezalel in art, and he is now the director in the Society for the Protection of Nature of Urban Nature, and he's doing a big move on this issue. So I'm happy to have today Amir, and the subject or the title of his lecture, Amir, I think you can do it much better than I am. Please, Amir.
Good evening, everybody. Happy to be with you this evening, and I'm happy that you found time to join us. It is very frustrating to meet in such circumstances, but as you may well know, this Corona business is going to be with us for the next few weeks, if not month, sadly. So we have to adapt, and I will share with you this evening a presentation showing how art can be and is a part of our efforts in wildlife conservation in Israel. Not only in Israel, but all over the world, artists are taking active participation in conservation efforts. So from our point of view, as you may have seen, we are a group of people that share many talents, and we come from many walks of life. And together we combine a unique force in nature conservation in Israel. And this evening I'll share with you how art is a very important part of this process. Ellen in the JBO has a gallery that operates under the JBO, and Yossi is very active in promoting artists and art for conservation. But I'm going to approach this from a personal angle, and one of the first pictures I'd like to share with you is this unique opportunity I got to document an Israeli mountain gazelle overlooking its territory, and in the backdrop you can see the Golden Junction. And this photograph epitomizes what I'm trying to do with my visual arts. And the idea is not only to use photography, it's sketching, it's painting, it's video, any means that can convey an idea in a very emotional and very direct way from my point of view is a very important tool. So I'm going to take you along the path I took, and this is my personal path, and And I want to share with you basically that everybody with his or her own talents can utilize it towards nature conservation, either in their personal space or in the public domain, which is very, very important. This could be media, but it can also be physical by stewardship of habitats and land.
Amir, can you come a little closer to the computer? Yep.
Sure. So it all starts from the way a person develops. And in my personal way, my notebooks as a very young ornithologist at the age of 11 basically brought me into this to this world. And you can see these little booklets that were actually my diaries. This is where I wrote down my bird lists, and you can see that in a very early stage, I started also documenting visual aspects of wildlife and birds. And you can see that although these are lists, there are also I experimented in descriptions, verbal descriptions of what I saw, and also visual sketching of birds. And I found myself more and more attracted to this. And as you can see that as the years go by, this is just behind me up here. You can see that I accumulate these experiences, not necessarily in a verbal way, but in a visual way. So very soon after I finished my studies in Bezalel as a photographer, I found out that I'm more attracted towards sketching and painting and using color and describing nature in situ, not through photographs or skins in museums, but actually holding a pair of binoculars or a telescope and sketching as I go by. If I see something that's impressive, I immediately take notes of it. It's usually very quick sketches, few words. And you can see here on the left how I described an Andean condor on a very high hill in southern Chile, or the red-headed woodpecker that is one of the most impressive woodpeckers in the Austral forest. Now, the idea was that when I went to this first expedition after my graduation from Bezalel, is to photograph and sketch. But I found myself more and more going into this very personal way of working without technology. When I came back to Israel, I found myself in dire straits. It was very hard for me to go back into regular life after tasting the sweet taste of expedition, of a routine that is based on movement in a specific geographical area. And I really got hooked on this. So I decided to embark on a project very similar to the one I did in South America, but in Israel. And in those days, in the early 90s, everybody was speaking about the Golan Heights being returned to Syria, a big peace treaty, etc. And I thought to myself, well, I'd better get to the Golan Heights before someone gives it back and document the Golan Heights. And here you can see a sketch of the Golan Heights, the Sea of Galilee down here. And this is an impression of the Golan Heights. This is the Yarmouk, this is the Jordan, this is Mount Hermon on the top. And I managed to convince Zmora Bitan, which is a very well-known publishing house. And I told them, listen, if someone gives the Golan Heights back to Syria, we'll have a great, memorabilia. So they said, wow, let's go for it. And they gave me 6,000 shekels. That even in those days, it was a very small sum of money. And I went on a 6-month expedition, starting from the Hermon, going down to the volcanoes, the plateaus, and meeting the different wildlife and plant life. And actually, this book was published. The publisher probably lost quite a few shekels on this book because the Golan, I'm happy to say, was never returned. And financially, it wasn't a big success, but it was a very, very intriguing experience. And here you can see how the use of bird banding on the right enabled me to really get close visual understanding of how birds are built, the coloration, the physical features. And on the left, you can see the experimental work with watercolors. And here you can see how this diary came about. And this brought up a new project, the Jordan River sketchbook in 1996. This was never published. This is a dummy, but the experience, again, was fantastic, meeting the different wildlife along the route. This is the jungle cat, which is a beautiful wild cat that lives along the reed beds in the Jordan River and in the fish ponds around. And this is not a very common cat anymore because, first of all, fish ponds are being dried out all over Israel. And the Jordan River, as you may well know, has very little water in it. This year might be exceptional because, you know, the Sea of Galilee is very close to its upper limit. So, God willing, we'll have enough rains that the Gania barrage will be open and we'll have beautiful streaming water down the Jordan River. Hopefully, I'm planning, I don't know if I'm going to be able to execute it, to flow down the Jordan River on a canoe like Rob Roy, like the Rob Roy expedition. So hopefully keep your fingers crossed. If you hear that the dam is going to be opened, I'm going to be on a kayak going downriver. So the expedition concept is a very important part of the work because it gives you a very beautiful opportunity to understand an area from the beginning to the end. And here you see in 2002, I decided to embark on an expedition in the Negev. This is was done with a good friend of mine that I met on a project that Yossi Leshem was one of the dynamos behind it, the generators. It was the Hula Artists for Nature Foundation project. This was a beautiful project that I probably will show it later on. Maybe if we have more presentations, if we carry on with this Corona business. But one of the people I met there was a great French artist, Jean Chevalier, a very funny man, but also very talented. So I decided to invite him on this trip. This is my studio away from home. So when I go traveling and in Israel, sometimes abroad, and I need a firm studio, a firm base that I can operate from, I have this old VW four-wheel drive that it's basically a little live-in camper. And this is used to create a studio away from home. And this brings us to places where you meet the unique wildlife of the Negev. And hopefully this winter, we will go and visit the Negev and search for the Khubara bustard, or the McQueen's bustard, which is one of Israel's largest remaining land birds. And you can see it here in a beautiful early morning. Before starting its display dance, with wind ruffling its neck feathers, with beautiful backlight. So the McQueen's bustard is one of the most important bird species that we're focusing on in our protection efforts in the Negev. So it was a very unique experience to spend a few days in the habitat from early morning to noon to dusk. This enables us to watch and understand these amazing creatures in a very intimate way. You see the different light conditions, how they affect this bird. So the first one was a very windy, this is a very windy, sandy day, a dust storm actually. And you can see the yellow haze. And here you can see a beautiful, clear, wet morning, you know, with a bit of fogginess. And yes, the Western Negev has quite a lot of fog because it gets the wet wind from the Mediterranean Sea. So these are the landscapes we meet along the way. They're amazing. Sunrise and sunset in the Negev Desert are inspirational. And you can see this is not a fake smile. This is a true smile because this is how we observe, we search, we look for animals. These are Dorcas gazelles, are Negev gazelles, a very beautiful and delicate mammal. Two males fighting. These are sketches done by Jean, and you can see that there's a sort of a group of wildlife artists operating all over the world that communicate through their sketches. And each time we start working somewhere, we always create some sort of communication with the people around. So here you can see a group of soldiers that saw this suspicious van with two people in telescopes, and they were sure we were infiltrators from Egypt. So they came by and they were amazed that people would embark on such effort for this, to sketch the beautiful winter flowers of the Negev. Or on the other side of Mount Keren, we met this beautiful striped hyena, which is one of Israel's largest carnivores, existing carnivores, that is actually doing not bad. It's adapting quite well to the road system in Israel, which provides it quite a lot of dead carcasses, which is its main food. And here you can see a female. This was sketched via telescope about 800 meters, nearly a kilometer away. So sometimes you have to use your imagination to complete the image. And you can see all the funny structures here on the page. It was a very windy day, so sand was flying all over the watercolor. So the sand reacts with the colors, and then the wind hits the board, so all of the watercolor spills. So this is something that is it can never be done in a studio. This is intensive field work. And here you can see she woke up and stretched, and you have to do it very, very quickly. And there's a fine line between being scientific and being impressionistic. And as time passes, and you can see from my early works, they were very, very meticulous. They were very scientific. And today I feel more and more obliged to go into the more free work, let the weather, let the mood control the work, and less focus on scientific truthfulness. Another beautiful, very delicate bird from the Negev Desert, the hoopoe lark. If we get to these habitats soon, springtime, it has the most beautiful, melodious, sad song you could ever hear. And if you listen to it in the silence of the desert and you hear the hoopoe lark singing, it will give you the shivers. It's an amazing, amazing song, and I would very much like to take you down to the Arava to hear this beautiful song. So this is my studio. This is my indoors, and you can see how I operate indoors. I have everything I need. Optics, colors, and also if I need to cook or eat in the evening, this is ideal. And this is how I work. And here you can see a group of pelicans early morning preening in the Agamon. This is where we're planning our next trip. And I think one of the most amazing things is how the birds and the habitat intermix, reflect. And you can see I'm not interested anymore in how the eye looks or the tip of the bill, but more of how the colors and the shapes and the mood is created. Because you can be very exact with a camera. With a camera, I can shoot so sharp, so quick that there is no real need for this. And again, the bug or the expedition bug is very important. One of the birds I really wanted to see for many, many years is one of the largest owls in the world. I'm an owl freak, and owls will get me going a long distance. And I got an opportunity to get to Japan with the Ministry of the Environment for a big biodiversity conference, and I was lucky enough to meet up with an old friend that actually gave me a small car, helped me take out the seats. I put in a futon and a cardboard with food, and I decided to drive from Tokyo up north to Hokkaido. It's a 1,500 kilometer road trip. And on the way, of course, this is an exceptional area. Hokkaido is very well known for its unique birds. This is the Japanese red-crowned crane, dancing in a beautiful cornfield in November. This is nearly 2-3 weeks from now, when Japan becomes really shrouded with winter and cold weather. And these are the sketches of these Japanese cranes. And again, when you're in Japan, you start painting Japanese. You can see the long strip type compositions, and you can see the beautiful fall colors. And here I had an exceptional experience. I got to a place where I was told that fish owls, the blackest-stone fish owls, come to hunt. And apparently it was a michku, which is basically Japanese bed and breakfast that specializes in owls. And I got to this place, nobody speaks English, everything is in sign language. And when I got to the place, I saw a lot of very curious contraptions. And when I met the old ladies that run the place, I asked them, I did this, woo, woo. So they said, this is here, don't worry. So they got me arranged in a small loft room. And then I asked them, when is the who? They said, wait, first, food. And then who? And again, you can see Japanese, you can say a lot of things about Japanese people. If you like Japanese food, wow, this is the best Japanese supper I have ever had. And for the dessert, this is the blackish-stone fish owl coming to catch fish in the little stream just underneath the michku, which is an amazing thing to see this huge owl that specializes on hunting fish in freezing cold water in Hokkaido, and not one, but two, a male and a female. You can see the female on the right, it's much bigger, stronger, and wow, what an experience. So this might get you to understand the passion behind birds, nature conservation, and how it's an amazing motivation to set out on expeditions. Here again, I'm so happy Yossi is here, because Yossi, as a child, he was and still is my mentor, and Yossi gets the best trips, but he was offered to lead the kosher trip to Antarctica, and I was so envious. I said, but I'm Yossi, Sahten, great. And suddenly I get a telephone from Yossi saying, listen, I have a problem. I have to get to the United States. I have to give an important lecture. Would you mind taking over? I told him, with Yossi, you never have to, you mustn't get excited. Otherwise, he takes advantage of it. So I told him, no, Yossi, I will check. The next phone call was to all the people I had, lectures and meetings. I said, sorry, for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be in charge of a kosher trip to Antarctica. And immediately I started learning all the things that you must do and you mustn't do, because, my family is not very, my wife is, but my family is not very. So I became an expert on kosher, and I bought fishes and everything. And I was the first Mashgiach Shmut in Antarctica. So these expeditions are amazing, because people are really focused on wildlife. All they want to see is wildlife. Give them wildlife, they're happy 24/7. And remember, this is the Antarctic, so that means it's 24 hours light. So you really have to prepare. And the trip is an amazing on old Russian spy ships that will bring you to the most serene and untouched places on our planet. And you'll see, turn off the computer, because I'm going to really, you're going to eat your heart out, because it's, thank you, Yossi, thank you. So the landscapes are amazing, and they're the magnitude, the size, everything is, is biblical. Although in biblical times, nobody knew about Antarctica, but the scale is biblical.
Amir?
Yeah.
Sorry to bother. You're going in and out in sound.
Okay. How's this? Am I
better? Yeah.
Good. By the way, if you have questions, write them down and we will go over them. So, you know, maybe even as I speak, so use the chat to ask the questions. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. One of the most amazing parts of the trip is not only Antarctica, it's the Southern Ocean. And, you know, most of Earth is covered by sea. So this habitat is extremely unique, not only for what's happening over the sea and on the sea, but also beneath the sea. So going on an expedition in the Southern Ocean is so exciting because you get to meet one of the most amazing and marvelous creatures on Earth, such as this wandering albatross, 3.5 meters wingspan. It starts breeding at the age of 5, which is very, very late for these birds. They usually they form a couple and they stay as the couple for tens of years. The oldest albatross documented in history is over 60-year-old albatross in New Zealand, and they are very long-lived animals, and they spend most of the time at sea. And here you can see how well adapted they are on utilizing every little wind, and they are very, very efficient flies, and they are also under great threat because of long-line fishing. So every place we reach, we see how these unique animals are declining, and they're declining due to development, to non-sustainable industries of fishing and such. So we, on one hand, we are going into their habitats and we are getting involved in their cycle, but on the other hand, tourism and natural history tourism and education is a very, very important thing. When you ask yourself, where do I get my fish? Are they fished sustainably? This is a very important thing. And when you see these creatures, you understand that you do not want fish that have been fished in non-sustainable long-line fishing on your plate. This is something you understand and people understand after the experience. And this photograph, for me, was one of the most, emotional encounters in the Southern Ocean. This is a blow of a humpback whale with an albatross, with a wandering albatross crossing together. So this moment of two magnificent creatures meeting visually, each one of them was minding their own business, but seeing that together, that moment, wow, what an experience. And again, the creatures are amazing. This is a leopard seal, and the moments to see, people say penguins can't fly. Says who? QED. They do fly. They hover over the water. They speed their movement in the sea by gliding over the water, using the energy out of the water. And look at this beautiful cloak of water that I really wanted to document, because this is something very hard to see. So the cloak here was the motivation for this picture. Or when there is a very harsh Antarctic storm that erupts in a minute, and suddenly you see that it's another day in the park for these creatures. Okay, another beautiful day in Brown Bluff turned into an amazing storm that we had to race back to the boats. And it was so intensive, wind over 80 kilometers per hour. You can see this penguin nearly blown over by the wind. All the seals are covered immediately by ice. And we have to reach the boats quickly because this is a dangerous situation. And of course, I'm last to leave because I have to stay and take as many photographs as I can, because this is an experience that I will never forget. This was taken by a friend of mine on the boat that said, "Hey, Amir, come on, we got to get back." And once I started with these expeditions, I started reaching also the North Pole. And this is the Arctic expedition chapter. And again, the wildlife and the adaptation to this cold climate is amazing. And the star of the Arctic, of course, is the polar bear, which is a symbol of climate change and how the anthropogenic effect affect a specific species that depends on ice. Without the ice, there is no food for polar bears. They need the sea ice. So about 10 different populations of polar bears are under threat right now because of climate change and because the melting of the Arctic ice cap. And again, I always love to photograph, but there's nothing like a good sketch to bring out this beautiful creature. Africa. And Africa, you know, once you get to Africa, you always want to come back because basically you understand the origin of life. You know, it sounds a cliche, but it's true. The origin of life is in Africa. All the other continents basically broke off from Africa. And we have pieces of Africa all over the world. But if you want to see the origin of species, how things started, then Africa is the place. You understand it when you get there, and wildlife is everywhere. I was in the shower and suddenly I heard noise outside, and you know, this is bear wildlife, and I see this beautiful young baboon, you know, looking at me. I was looking at him. I was naked. He was naked, and this is a chapter in my understanding of the natural world, is that we are not different. We are a part of this system. We are alike. We operate different. We might think different. We might think we're different, but we're very, very similar. We're affected by ecology just like any other being. Okay, so this meeting, you know, two naked organisms in Uganda by the Nile was for me a very, very unique experience. Meeting these primates, this beautiful male chimpanzee with all his glory and his power was so impressive. Even I was also getting some pee and poop as I was taking these pictures. But you see how similar they are to human beings. This is an amazing thing. These are the mountain gorillas, also a very beautiful and unique experience. Now, sometimes, you know, you get these telephone calls and you're not sure if someone's playing a prank on you. And I got this telephone call from a very well-known planner in Israel. And he said, listen, we need someone to go down to Angola to check out an area. Would you be willing to do that? And I said to myself, wow, let me check. And I said, and he told me, listen, choose any area in Angola you would like, because we need large, vast areas to do an ecological assessment. So I went into the internet to Google Earth, and suddenly I saw this picture of pink sand dunes. And I said, wow, I've never seen pink sand dunes. I'd love to get there. So I got back to this friend, and I said, yeah, I'm willing to go, but I want a satellite phone because, you know, Angola was just after a civil war, and I need a Zodiac, and I need a four-wheel drive. Not a problem. Wow. And I got it. And this is our expedition team. And I landed and I got to one of the most secluded and most desolate areas in the world. This is the Namib Desert, where sand dunes reach the Atlantic. And you can only pass there 3 hours a day because when high tide gets to the bottom of the sand dunes, everything is swept back to the sea. This is how it looks. This is an amazing place. You know, it looks like from another planet. And I was amazed to see that the sand is really pink. And when you look closer, you understand that the pink color comes from basalt sand that comes from the border between the Namib Desert and Namibia. And it flows via the sea currents and then thrown with waves and a wind onto land, and this is how it's formed. An amazing place. And this is how we basically lived for 3 weeks. This is the Zodiac, and we crossed towards Isla del Tigre. This is called the Tigre Coast because you can see these dark lines of pink sand create stripes like a tiger. So merchant ship used to call this the Tiger Coast. And of course, you can see, and this is an amazing story. This a white pelican flock flew away from us, and as they flew away, in order to release weight, they threw up fresh fish they just caught. This is one of the most rich fishing grounds in Africa. So they just, in order to be lighter, they just spat the fish. So these fish were laying there, and it was such a shame to let them rot. We collected a few fish, and that evening we made one of the best suppers ever that I've had based on pelican puke. And I must admit, every birder has these unique experiences. This is the first time I had pelican leftovers, and the fish were extremely fresh, beautiful, tasty. And another story, we ran out of water. So for about a week and a half, until we got replenished, we only drank beer. So you can imagine what kind of an expedition it was, drinking cold beer on very hot days all day long. And as I said, it was a very dangerous expedition. And luckily for us, we were saved in the nick of time from some fellow South Africans that got us out of trouble just before the car and boat were swept into the Atlantic. And we're reaching slowly towards the end of this lecture, and you can see that these expeditions, and I must admit I'm very itchy now because it's been nearly half a year since I've left Israel. This is the trip I made to Kamchatka in search of a very unique and rare shorebird called the spoonbill. And Kamchatka is very well known for its landscapes, volcanoes, and everything. But sometimes you get disappointed because when I got there, it was foggy for 2.5 weeks. You couldn't see the landscape apart from one day, and you can see it down here, beautiful landscape, but only one day of landscape. But the bird life and the wildlife is amazing. Here you can see one of the most amazing raptors in the world. This is the Steller sea eagle. One of the largest raptors on Earth. Its huge bill is adapted for tearing the skin of walruses, which are one of the biggest Arctic mammals, and it has to go through the skin. So it's a very, very powerful bird. And as we got closer to the village from where we set off to see the spoonbill, we encountered the civilized part of the expedition. And here you can see Daddy's car, but don't think Mother doesn't have a car. This is Mommy's car. Okay, so everybody has his own car, and this is the type of vehicles people use in Kamchatka to move from one place to the other on the permafrost or in wintertime. And here you can see the actual operation of crawling towards the territory of the spoonbill sandpiper. And here you can see everybody's really getting very, very tense towards this experience. And here it is. So traveling all these kilometers, all these miles towards the East Siberian coast to meet this beautiful and rare sandpiper. Something like 100 couples still remain and are tagged. You can see this bird is tagged. And there's a special conservation project there that collects eggs and breeds them and grow little chicks and tag them and release them. I'm very happy to say that there has been some success with the species, and the tourism that comes to watch them benefits this project in a very, very important way. So here, ecotourism helps this project. It's a very, very unique project. And of course, there's always a sketch involved of this beautiful sandpiper, small sandpiper. And we're getting towards the end of the presentation. And, everybody knows Galapagos. Galapagos is very, very unique. Has a beautiful tourism infrastructure. And I, hope that anybody that can afford it get to Galapagos and enjoy this beautiful and amazing like going back to prehistorical times, meeting all these reptiles, and of course penguins. And you know, once you get the penguin bug, you always love to see penguins. And there is an endemic species called the Galapagos penguin that I went to see. And I got to a place where you can see, and suddenly I see this endangered species here. This is the endangered Galapagos penguin. And suddenly I see the sea lion, you know, trying to catch it and coming from behind. I said, oh my God, I'm going to document how a sea lion is going to eat an endangered species. So I was clicking away, and you know, he was reaching towards the penguin, and suddenly I see the penguin just giving the sea lion a bite on its nose. I said to myself, oh my God, I understand why it's still not extinct, because this is a very, very brave little bird. And you know, after the sea lion swam away, I could just hear it laughing and saying, you know, not this time, mate, I got you first. One of the most funny parts of this trip was on the way back. You know, we were sitting in the airport waiting for our plane back home, and suddenly I see all these Darwin finches eating empanadas on a plate in a cafeteria. And I said to myself, wow, this is evolution. If Darwin could have seen these finches that were the base for his theory of evolution, feeding off a plate with empanadas. So suddenly you see how all the finches are getting the same size beak because they're eating the same type of food. So you see here how evolution, you know, creates species, and the way we create a new world brings species back together again. So we see how biodiversity is affected by our world and decreasing thanks to the way we develop it. So here you see Darwin finch eating an banana. So another short thing. One thing I love to do is going back to the same places I went before. To 2019, I decided to go to the Negev again to see how things have changed, and I made a very similar trip. This time, a good friend of mine that passed away last year, sadly, a good friend, a very close friend, helped me to get my studio up to pace with solar energy. So Guy Sela, my friend, he's also the guy who created Solar Edge, which is one of the most biggest solar system companies in Israel, and it's still developing very nicely. So together we electrified this beautiful studio. So now the studio is not only hardcore. You can actually work away from home, internet, everything. And of course, I don't know if you know Arik is my dog companion. Takes good care of the car when I'm away. And here I started off in Gaza, and suddenly you see how our wintering raptors meet the security situation in Gaza. This is one of the balloons that's filming and giving bringing information from Gaza back to Israel, and you see how these intermix together. These beautiful Israeli mountain gazelles on the border, and of course the people, the Bedouins, and in the south. It's a land with no law. Actually, this is people say that until Beersheba, it's a land of where you have where God is, and also civilization. But when you go down south, there's no God and there's no civilization. Everybody's, it's the land of outlaws, but it's also the land which is most closely related to the Sahara habitats of North Africa. This is the Agur sands, beautiful, and you can see how he started working also with the drone, which is another element that gives you another perspective. Okay, and this is the beautiful challenges we had. This is a friend of mine that joined for that part of the trip, and this is the sand turtle, the Kleinman turtle, which is an endemic species to the Negev, to the southern Negev, to the sands. You can see it feeding on a flower, also under threat. This winter was amazing. It was really wet. You can see the different habitats, full of water, close to migration. These are birds that I met along the border. This is the Egyptian border. This is an Egyptian outpost. So I tend to revisit. The revisiting is a very, very unique thing. To end this presentation, I would like to share with you two projects that combine the arts in the activity we do. This is the JBO that you've already visited quite a few times, and the Knesset in the backdrop. The location is very, very important. The fact that we're in the city, the center of town, but art is also a very important part of what we do. And you see that our activity is also focusing not only on science and stewardship, but also on learning how to observe and using your eyes and sensing nature through these. You can hear how kids relate to wildlife. This is a European nightjar, a common migrant in Jerusalem in springtime, and how different kids, interpret what they see, and with great ease, which is fantastic to see. Really, really fun to see how these kids react to nature, and many of them might not become artists, but they will have this ability to observe, to understand, to watch. And the second project, which you also know, is the Gazelle Valley, which is a project that art is involved. A lot of people come to photograph there, to sketch, to paint. And I feel that this is a way to bring in people closer to nature, people from all walks of life, not only scientists or bird nerds, but also people who are enthusiastic about nature. And here you can see how our hides provide the setting. So much of our work is directed to science, education, and arts. So if we see someone sketching a bird, it's just as good as someone doing a scientific paper or involved in education. And this is what I always gets me going. This was the film. This shot was taken last summer. Not this summer holiday because of Corona. And you see grandfather and grandchild setting out on an expedition in Gazelle Park, close to home. So this concept that started off in a few notebooks that I wrote as a kid in Yossi's Young Ornithological Club, helped me develop my interest in wildlife and my approach towards wildlife conservation, and to what we do as a team. Everybody with his or her expertise. So, and this is the final photograph. So if you have any questions or queries, this is the time.
So folks, I don't see any questions on the chat or in the questions. Feel free to type in if you have a question. I can also open you up to talk if you want to. Just raise a hand and let us know that you have something to say. And we'll jump you in. Amir, do you want to say a couple words about you mentioned briefly the Hula Valley project, and I know the Jordan Valley project that Yossi was instrumental in organizing. Maybe a couple words about those things while we wait for questions.
Yes. Incorporating art and artists in conservation work is a very useful tool to focus the attention of the public, decision makers on specific important issue. And this was done twice in Israel. And I think we should do a presentation on this, separately in the near future or further on. But these two projects, the Hula Valley and the Jordan Valley, were done with a cooperation with an organization called the Artists for Nature Foundation. It brings top artists from all over the world with local artists to work around specific conservation issue. The first project was done in Hula, which was a very unique project. Two groups of artists arrived twice to Hula, once in winter, once in spring, really the best wildlife artists ever from Europe, North America, and from Israel. And together we produced a body of work that serves for wildlife conservation to this day as public publishing material, educational material. Of course, there's a lot of communication hype around it. So from that point of view, it's a very unique tool. It's very stressful, a lot of work. Yossi can, you know, he can definitely say that. But I think it's worth the effort. Yossi, correct me if I'm wrong. Yossi says yes.
Yeah. But the one, if you can you hear me? Amir? We did the other one around the Dead Sea to bring the Dead Sea alive. And the second stage was that we did it 6 days on the Israeli side of the Dead Sea. And the other part was 6 days in Jordan. And as Amir already said so nicely in his presentation, we brought students from in Jordan, 160 students joined our activity. And also in Israel, we had a bus from Jericho, a bus of Bedouins, and 2 buses of Jewish Israeli students. Yeah, Amir, you can maybe show both sides of the album. And we have the albums, you can purchase it. We made an album with the municipality of here. See, to the other side, it's in English, Hebrew and Arabic together. Yeah, and it was really a great day. Amir took part, of course, and Zev Labinger from Israel and other artists, and it got people together, and it was a lot of fun. And maybe we can get you to meet after the Corona program. That's in the Hula with the songs and great album. And just to summarize, I think that what Amir was talking, if you want to get people like you connected to nature, we should go, I think, in 2 channels. One channel goes to the brain, this is science and conservation. The other one should go to the heart. And I think this is art. And if you can combine art and science together, and that's what Amir is doing and some others, then I think you can really get.
Great. So if there are no questions, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's always a pleasure. It's always better to meet face to face. You know, this Zoom business is, what can we do? But we never stop, we never give up. So we'll do it also in Zoom if needed. But hopefully very quickly we'll get back to the field and get together again.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you, Yossi. And thank you, everybody who joined us. We did record the session, so if you missed any of it, we will be happy to send you the link. And just let me know. And we'll be in touch about the next plans and where we go from here. Have a good weekend and Shabbat Shalom to everybody.